I was sitting at my kitchen island blowing steam off my morning coffee when my phone vibrated against the marble counter. The screen lit up with a message from my daughter, Chloe. We were exactly 2 weeks away from her wedding. I assumed she needed to confirm the ribbon colors for the reception chairs or ask me to pick up another last-minute invoice. Instead, I read 2 sentences that changed everything. Mark's parents need more tables for their country club friends. Don't bother coming to the wedding, Mom. It's not your day, and there's just no room. No phone call, no tears. Just a cold line on a glowing screen erasing me from the biggest day of her life. I didn't drop my mug. I didn't burst into tears or fall to the floor in a fit of melodramatic grief. I simply set my coffee down and stared out the window at the oak tree my late husband and I planted 20 years ago. Since her father passed, I had done everything to give Chloe a good life. But over the last 2 years, since she met Mark, I had become invisible. Mark's family was loud, wealthy, and obsessed with appearances. I was just a retired middle school teacher living in a quiet suburban house. To Chloe, I had become an embarrassment, or worse, a utility. I scrolled up our text history. It was a long list of demands. Pay this deposit, pick up this receipt, transfer money for the florist. I had funded the most crucial parts of this wedding from my own savings. I typed a reply, then deleted it. Arguing wouldn't change who she had become. Pleading would only give her the satisfaction of rejecting me twice. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the warm liquid steady my nerves. If I wasn't welcome at the wedding, neither was my wallet. It really was that simple. What happens when you cut off the roots of a tree? The leaves start to wither. Chloe was about to learn exactly what happens when you treat your mother like an ATM and then throw away the card. To understand how we got here, you have to look at the past 6 months of wedding planning. Chloe had handed the reins entirely to Mark's mother, Victoria. Victoria wanted a grand, aesthetic-heavy event. She picked the country club, she chose the silk napkins, and she dictated the guest list. But Victoria was notoriously cheap when it came to actually pulling out her own credit card. That was my job. Chloe would call me in a panic, whispering that Victoria had found the perfect artisan caterer, but Mark's parents had their money tied up in investments. Mom, please. It's my dream day, she would beg. So I paid. I didn't hand Chloe cash. I am a practical woman. I called the vendors directly. I used my own credit card to book the artisan caterer, the premium floral designer, and the specialty tiered cake. The contracts and receipts were sitting right in my email inbox under the name Audrey Miller. I spent over $15,000 of my own retirement funds because I loved my daughter. I remembered a dinner we had last month. Victoria sat across from me, swirling her wine. "We are just so thrilled to host this magnificent evening," Victoria boasted to her friends, taking full credit for the menu I had paid for. Chloe sat beside her, nodding eagerly, completely ignoring me at the end of the table. I was the silent sponsor. I didn't say anything then. I thought keeping the peace was part of being a mother. I swallowed my pride, ate my dry chicken, and went home to my quiet, empty house. I thought my financial sacrifice would eventually earn me a shred of respect, or at least a front row seat to watch my only child walk down the aisle. Looking at the text message on my phone, the illusion completely shattered. She didn't want a mother. She wanted a sponsor. And she had just casually fired her sponsor via text message, assuming I would just accept the disrespect and fade into the background. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. Before I made my next move, my mind drifted back to the final dress fitting just a week prior. It was the moment I should have seen this coming. Chloe had invited me, Victoria, and 3 of her bridesmaids to the bridal boutique. When Chloe stepped out in the ivory lace gown, she looked breathtaking. I stood up, reaching into my purse for a tissue. But before I could even speak, Victoria rushed forward, blocking my view entirely. "Oh, darling, You look like a true Preston Victoria, cooed, fussing with the train. I stepped to the side, trying to catch my daughter's eye. Chloe. You look beautiful. Your father would have been so proud. Chloe glanced at me, her smile tightening. Thanks, Mom. Be careful, don't step on the veil. She immediately turned back to Victoria to discuss whether she should wear the Preston family pearls. I stood there an extra in my own daughter's life. When the boutique owner brought out the champagne, they only poured 5 glasses. They had miscounted. I was the one left holding an empty napkin. Chloe didn't notice. Or worse, she didn't care. When the final alteration bill came, Victoria suddenly had to take a very important phone call outside. Chloe looked at me with that expectant, entitled gaze. I walked to the counter and handed over my card. That was the dynamic. I was expected to finance the fantasy while they lived it. I had justified it by telling myself I was helping her transition into a new family. I thought my quiet support would build a bridge. But bridges are meant to be walked on, and I had effectively turned myself into a doormat. Sitting in my kitchen now, the memory of that empty champagne glass didn't make me sad. It made me incredibly focused. The fog of maternal obligation lifted, replaced by a sharp, crystal-clear reality. I was not going to be treated this way in my own life. I didn't call my daughter to yell. I didn't compose a long, emotional paragraph demanding an apology. In my 62 years, I've learned that people who disrespect you don't suddenly develop a conscience just because you point out their bad behavior. They only understand consequences. I opened my email and searched for the vendor contracts. Because I am meticulous, I had saved everything in a dedicated folder. I clicked on the catering agreement. There, in black and white, was the clause, "Services are provided to the primary account holder." Cancellations made 10 days prior to the event will result in a suspension of services with a 50% refund to the original payment method. I checked the calendar. We were 14 days out. I was well within the window. I did the same for the florist and the luxury bakery. All the accounts were in my name, billed to my credit card, tied to my phone number. Chloe and Victoria had been so busy picking out colors and tasting samples that they never bothered to read the paperwork. They assumed the money was just magically attached to the wedding venue. I picked up my phone and dialed the caterer. "Hello, this is Audrey Miller," I stated, keeping my voice even. "I need to cancel the catering order for the wedding on the 24th. The representative paused. "Oh, Ms. Miller, are you sure the wedding is only 2 weeks away?" "I'm absolutely sure," I replied. "The event is no longer taking place for me. Please process the cancellation and refund the remainder to my card." It took less than 10 minutes. I made 3 phone calls. Catering, flowers, cake. With a few polite words, I withdrew nearly $12,000 of goods and services from a wedding I was no longer invited to. I closed my laptop and felt a strange sensation wash over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt incredibly light. For the first time in 2 years, I had stopped pouring my energy into a bottomless pit. I took my coffee mug to the sink, washed it out, and started thinking about what I wanted to do with my newly refunded money. The next morning, the refunds began appearing in my bank account as pending transactions. Seeing those numbers return to my balance felt like reclaiming pieces of my own dignity. I knew how this would play out. The vendors wouldn't necessarily call Chloe immediately. I was the primary contact on the billing files. They had sent the cancellation confirmations directly to my email. Unless Chloe or Victoria reached out to them to make a change, they wouldn't know the food and flowers were gone until the delivery dates drew much closer. Part of me wondered if I should text Chloe and give her a heads up. I picked up my phone and looked at her last message. "Don't bother coming. There's just no room." I locked the screen and slid the phone into my pocket. No. She had made her choice as an adult. Adults have to manage their own events. If Mark's family wanted to dictate the guest list and claim the wedding as their own, they could figure out how to feed 150 people. To ensure there were no loose ends, I called my bank. I instructed them to decline any future charges from the venue or affiliated wedding services. I had given Chloe an authorized user card on one of my smaller credit accounts months ago for wedding emergencies. I calmly asked the bank representative to cancel that specific card immediately. "Card deactivated, Ms. Miller," the representative confirmed cheerfully. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "Actually, yes," I smiled. "My schedule just opened up next week. Does my travel rewards card have any partnerships with airlines flying to the Caribbean?" She laughed. "We certainly do." Planning a getaway. "Something like that," I answered. I spent the rest of the afternoon tending to my garden. I pruned the roses, pulled the weeds, and enjoyed the sunshine on my face. I wasn't waiting by the phone. I wasn't dreading the confrontation. I had simply stepped off the ride. Let Victoria and Mark's family plan the wedding of the century. They just had to do it with their own checkbooks. By Wednesday, my bank account was fully credited. I sat at my dining table, a brochure spread out in front of me. I had always wanted to visit a coffee farm in Costa Rica. My husband and I used to talk about it, but there was always a reason to delay a roof repair, Chloe's college tuition, a new car. With the refunded wedding money sitting there, I didn't hesitate. I booked a direct flight and a beautiful bungalow overlooking a lush green valley. My flight was scheduled to leave on Thursday morning, exactly 2 days before Chloe's wedding. I pulled my suitcase from the hall closet and began packing. Sundresses, a good pair of walking shoes, a wide-brimmed hat, and 3 books I had been meaning to read for months. Every item I folded and placed into the bag felt like a declaration of independence. Later that afternoon, Chloe finally texted me. "Hey, Mark's dad needs the vendor details for the string quartet. Can you forward the email?" No apology for uninviting me. No asking how I was doing. Just another demand. Because I hadn't paid for the string quartet Victoria had actually handled that one detail, I simply replied with the contact information. I didn't mention the catering. I didn't mention the flowers. I answered exactly what she asked, nothing more. "Thanks," she shot back. I looked at the suitcase on my bed and zipped it shut. I was done being the silent, reliable workhorse for people who only saw my value in dollar signs. Let them have their exclusive country club party. I was going to drink fresh coffee on a mountain. I arranged for my neighbor to water my plants and collect my mail. I turned off the water valve to the washing machine, adjusted the thermostat, and locked the doors. My house was quiet, peaceful, and entirely mine. Tomorrow I would be thousands of miles away. The storm was coming, but I wasn't going to be anywhere near it when it hit. Thursday morning arrived with a crisp, cool breeze. I took a taxi to the airport, checked my bag, and breezed through security. I bought a magazine and a latte, settling into a comfortable chair near my departure gate. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an automated email from the catering company, a final survey asking about my cancellation experience. I deleted it. I knew exactly what was happening back home. Today was the day vendors usually called to finalize delivery times and loading dock access with the venue. When the caterer inevitably called the country club to confirm the cancellation, the venue coordinator would panic and call the bride. The dominoes were about to fall. I boarded Flight 402, finding my window seat. As the plane taxied down the runway, I put my phone on airplane mode. The engines roared, pressing me back into my seat. And as the wheels left the ground, a profound sense of relief washed over me. I watched the city shrink below the neat little grids of houses and roads fading into the clouds. I spent the flight reading my novel, enjoying complimentary snacks, and chatting briefly with the nice woman sitting next to me. She asked if I was traveling for business or pleasure. Pleasure? I smiled. Just taking some time for myself. When we landed in Costa Rica, the warm, humid air hit me like a comforting blanket. I retrieved my bag and found the driver holding a sign with my name. During the winding drive up into the mountains, I just stared out the window, mesmerized by the vibrant green foliage and the distant misty peaks. I checked into my bungalow, unpacked my few belongings, and walked out onto the private balcony. The view was spectacular. A small wooden table sat in the corner. I sat down, finally ready to reconnect to the world. I pulled my phone from my purse and turned off airplane mode. The screen immediately froze, flooded by a wave of notifications. My phone buzzed in my hand like an angry hornet. The notifications rolled in so fast, they overlapped. 27 missed calls, Chloe. 14 missed calls, Mark. 8 voicemails. 42 unread text messages. I didn't open the texts immediately. I simply placed the phone on the wooden table, walked inside the bungalow, and made myself a cup of the complimentary local coffee. I carried the steaming mug back out to the balcony, sat down, and finally unlocked the screen. The text messages were a descending staircase of panic. 11:45 a.m. Chloe. Mom, the venue just called. They said the caterer canceled, call me now. 12:10 p.m. Chloe, Mom. Why is the bakery saying the order was pulled? What did you do? 1:05 p.m. Chloe. Pick up your phone. Victoria is freaking out. We have 150 people coming on Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Mark, Audrey. This isn't funny. You need to fix this right now. 4:15 p.m. Chloe. How could you do this to me? You ruined my wedding. I listened to the first voicemail. Chloe was screaming, the sound of Victoria crying dramatically in the background. Mom, you have to call them back and pay. The caterer said the slot is booked unless we can drop 15 grand in cash today. Where are you? I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was rich, earthy, and perfect. I didn't ruin her wedding. I just stopped paying for a party I was banned from attending. They wanted an exclusive event without me, and they got exactly what they asked for. The problem was, they expected my money to attend in my place. They were adults. Mark's family had money, or so they claimed. They could figure out how to feed their guests. I deleted the voicemails. I wasn't going to let their self-created emergency disrupt the peace I had traveled so far to find. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Incoming call, Chloe. This time, I pressed answer. I lifted the phone to my ear. Hello. Mom, Chloe shrieked, her voice echoing wildly. Where are you? I've been calling for hours. You canceled everything. You have to call them and put your card back on file right now. I looked out over the lush green valley, keeping my voice entirely neutral. I can't do that, Chloe. What do you mean you can't? Victoria is having a panic attack. We have nothing to feed the guests. You have to fix this. Chloe. I interrupted, my tone firm enough to cut through her hysterics. You sent me a text telling me not to come to the wedding because there was no room for me. If I am not a guest, I am not a sponsor. I simply took my name off the contracts. You did this to punish me, she yelled. You're so petty. I'm not punishing you, I replied calmly. I accepted your boundary. You didn't want me there. But I refuse to pay thousands of dollars for an event I am excluded from. That is my boundary. Mark grabbed the phone. Audrey, listen. We can squeeze you in at a back table, okay? Just transfer the money. We need the cash right now. He didn't apologize. He just tried to negotiate a cheap seat for my wallet. The money has already been spent, I said. I'm currently sitting on a balcony in Costa Rica. Have a beautiful wedding. Costa Rica. Chloe snatched the phone back. You spent my wedding money on a vacation. I spent my money on myself, I corrected her gently. You and Victoria wanted total control of this wedding. Now you have it. Figure it out. I didn't wait for her next scream. I moved the phone away from my ear and tapped the red button. I then went into my settings and blocked both of their numbers. I didn't need to hear another word. The conversation was over, and for the first time in years, I had the final say. I spent the next week waking up at dawn, hiking through the cloud forests, and reading my books on the balcony. I didn't check social media, and my phone remained delightfully quiet. I felt a deep, abiding peace that I hadn't known since my husband passed away. I realized that my worth was not tied to how much I could provide for people who didn't respect me. When I finally returned to the States, my neighbor came over to return my spare key. She had heard through the neighborhood grapevine what happened on Saturday. I heard it was a disaster. She whispered over tea in my kitchen. Victoria had to order a mountain of pizzas and sub-sandwiches from a local deli. No flowers, just bare tables. People left early. I just nodded, pouring us more tea. I didn't feel a sense of malicious victory, just a quiet closure. Chloe had tried to build a fantasy life by stepping on my shoulders, and when I simply stepped out of the way, the fantasy collapsed. Months passed. Chloe eventually reached out via an email. It was a stiff, awkward message blaming the stress of the wedding, but stopping short of a real apology. She asked if we could meet for coffee and talk. I agreed, but on my terms. We met at a small cafe near my house. When she sat down, she looked tired. Her previous entitlement deflated. She tried to bring up the wedding to complain about how embarrassing it was for Mark's family. I raised a hand, stopping her. We aren't talking about the wedding, Chloe. If you want a relationship with me, it starts today based on mutual respect. No demands. No bankrolling your lifestyle. Just you and me. She looked at me, realizing the old dynamic was dead forever. She slowly nodded. Okay, Mom. I smiled, taking a sip of my coffee. It wasn't as good as the coffee in Costa Rica, but the taste of freedom made it sweet enough. I had drawn my line in the sand, and I would never let anyone cross it again.